achievements that you have had in the past 2 years. I think this would be really good for you all to share, because sometimes from an outsider's perspective, we do not understand how to measure progress in the social enterprise world. We do not know what exactly it means to go forward. It means to become better each year. So perhaps could we start with Carol first? Could you share with us what are some notable progress?
I think one of the development that came along on my path is that I joined business about 7 years back, and I was in charge of one of the BUs, the business unit, cards and gifts. And this cards and gifts have been around since, I think, because a good 10 over years, and it's been stagnant for a long while in that portfolio. We get disabled artists to paint, and then we develop into greeting cards, birthday cards. And for a long time, it has been like plateauing. So when I took over the portfolio, in order to make it go on to the next quantum leap, we decided on an inorganic growth to move into other product lines. And one inorganic growth that finally we decided on is the floral and hamper business. It's a complementary range of products, yet it adds on a full range of opportunities for us, yet tapping on the same target group, which are the corporates. So from there, we already started 2 years back, and we got a fund from CEF, Comcare Enterprise Fund, and with that, we were able to jump onto another business opportunity. So that's one major development that we had.
It's very interesting. I think because most of the times in our time when we look at gifts and things like this, we are hamper nation. Every Chinese New Year somebody needs to buy a hamper, otherwise your house is not stacked. So it does seem very, very relevant kind of gift culture. So Mr. Peter, could you share with us what's your notable achievement, things like you guys were proud of in the past 1-2 years?
Right. Maybe I just ask in the audience here, how many of you wanted to start a social enterprise? Are there any? Okay, a couple of them. Maybe another question, like how many of you have heard of social enterprise before? Okay, so most of you. Okay, fine. So I think for me, I always think that social enterprise is a little bit more challenged to run than a normal business, right? So because it's not because of anything else, it's because we are tackling a social change, right? A social change, and we are sort of, I always call it as a strange animal, whereby you have this business element of it, right? And on the other hand, you want to use the business element to achieve a social objective, right? So sometimes you have the best of both worlds, the social and business world, but you also face the challenge by both the social and the business world. So I think if you ask me what is the biggest achievement so far, I think I'm still passionately running my social enterprise. I think it's the biggest achievement. I think along the way, there'll be so many challenges you face, and there'll be so many happy stories that we work with individual volunteers and clients who are thanking us to say, okay, we got support, we really got support, and we see volunteer contribute their time and said, okay, we felt that we really find something that not only just spending our time, but we get to know the community, we get to contribute. So I think all these kept me going. But most importantly, I think is for myself is stay true to the purpose, right? So I left my job. I had a really good career in my job, and I was going to be promoted to the highest level in my previous company, right? But I always felt there's something more I can do. I have the skill sets, similar as Laura. I started when I was 18 years old to start working in a non-profit organization called ISAC. We organize conference, we bring foreigners from all over the world to China, and bring Chinese students to work in NGOs in Africa, in South America, etc. Right? As an 18-year-old, I was like really crazy. I have to attend school, and I have to go raise funds. I have to, organize this kind of conference, begging people for sponsorship, getting venues, getting speakers. It's really tough, right? So, but that passion about using my skill sets and make a difference to other people has stayed on within me, and that led me to left my job 2.5 years ago. I think despite all the challenges, like one of the challenges would be my family, right? To say, okay, you have a great career, right? Why do you want to leave your career and work harder and enter into something that they don't understand what is social enterprise? And also mainstream people will say, okay, judging by your success, how much more money you are earning, or what kind of assets do you have in your bank account or at your home. So I think I don't use these to compare and use this to judge myself, but I still felt that I can use my skill sets to make a difference, and despite whatever the challenge is, and I felt that I've stayed true to what I started with. So to me, this is the biggest achievement for myself. Yeah.
This is amazing because we all know what kind of attrition rates and what kind of difficulties social enterprises face in terms of staying afloat. So the fact that we have all of you here, with enterprises that are still going strong, it's a testament that things can work out. So perhaps, Laura, would you like to share?
So when I came to Singapore a year and a half ago to join this social enterprise, I actually thought it was quite well developed. I kind of jumped into it. And then when I joined, I realized actually we really didn't have our business model worked out at all. The way it started was find this cause that we were passionate about, build an adventure around it, and then try and find a company who's interested in it and wants to be involved in this project to be able to amplify that change. And that's really, really difficult. It's like square peg, round hole. Because you can go talk to 100 different companies and you still won't find someone who cares about that. Or if they do, they won't have the budget at that time. So when I joined, we kind of flipped the model, and we first started talking to companies. And we started looking at what are the leading companies out there who are trying to be more sustainable, or try to do well by doing good, which is something you might have heard a lot. So we started approaching companies like Unilever, like Standard Chartered Bank, a lot of these blue chip companies. And that was really, really tough. It took a lot of time to learn. It really took us a good six to 9 months last year before we actually got our first projects. And we started to get our first projects with Standard Chartered Bank and with Unilever. And that's actually some of my proudest moments, that we were able to take what we were passionate about, which was adventure, creating an impact, and being able to share a story through documentary films and through content, and actually be able to turn that into a business model. And at the end of it, for the three of us to still be friends, it's very, very important to still be loving what we're doing, and to be able to see how we can actually scale this, because that's important as well. You can have an impact on an issue, but ideally you want to be able to work out how can you scale your impact over time, to be able to both grow the business and scale the impact that you're actually having on people's lives.
I think this insight that you've shared with us is probably very valuable in terms of the scaling, because one part of scaling, you do require a lot of different hands, a lot of different people that can help you in different areas. So this next question will be for anyone who wants to answer, and it's really about the old conventional narrative that it's a trade-off, it's a dichotomy between satisfactory remuneration and a social enterprise life. In other words, I would like to ask, what exactly are each of your takes on this particular kind of thinking, right? Is it something that has necessarily to be bipolar, just necessarily to be opposing each other, or can people what are the kinds of things that people should look out for, and what kind of trade-offs when you're looking at remuneration and a very satisfactory social enterprise life? So this question is for anyone. Thank you, Ms. Carol.
I came across this question like a few years back. I think you read the summary of my background. I came from the commercial sector. Then I was also a very successful product manager in an FMCG company, and the pay packet is very good. However, there's something in my life that I had to ask myself, because then chasing after profits for your bosses and your company, you know that at the end of the day, it's into the pockets of shareholders. And the striving can sometimes become so meaningless. So it came upon a time when I decided that, okay, let's put a stop to this and look at life in a different angle. And this option came up, and I stared hard at it because I actually went for the interview in Bisling, and the pay package that they offered me is like, wow, so painful. 50% cut from what I was having then. I went back to think about it, and my boss brought me through what we call the shelter workshop, where the beneficiary works, and tell me, these are the lives that you're impacting. And whatever you're doing, this is the other motivation that is going to help you along with your work, and you know there's a meaning behind it, and that is giving jobs to these people. So I went back and said, okay, take the plunge. And then he also promised me that I think work-life balance will be a lot better. So I said, okay, a few benefits that's thrown in, all right, I give it a try. And 7 years later, I'm still around. Okay.
There's a very, very interesting perspective to it, because I think many of times we do indeed, whenever we're working for an MNC, or if any one of you are aspiring to work for a conglomerate, we are in fact pursuing and chasing the dreams of shareholders in general. We are in fact putting the toil and effort for these different large companies. But that's not to say that there's no value in working for them, because it does seem to me that from your bios, all three of you had some level of experience working outside first before going into what you're doing. So perhaps could anyone share, is that the preferred route? Should you work somewhere first, and then what the skills are transferable, what are the connections that are transferable? Perhaps maybe Peter, in fact, because you said you spent 8 years somewhere, and certainly when you're in that line, an accounting industry line, you gain a huge bird-eye view from all companies. Also, could you share what the skills transferable, and is it a preferred route to work first?
Right, I'm still thinking whether there is a choice if I restarted it. Should I start it fresh from uni, or should I, start working? I don't have an answer yet, but maybe my experience is talk about whether the skills I accumulated in my commercial kind of experience, is it transferable, right? I think certainly it is. I used to be the project manager for the National Stadium projects, to tear down the old National Stadium and building in the new sports hub, right? So finally it's up now. I spent 6 years as a consultant, advising Singapore government, trying to say how do you build a sort of world-class complex that is not only for one-off events, but is also for communities, and is also innovative in the way about arranging events and etc. So I spent 6 years leading a group of lawyers, accountants, engineers and architects, trying to work together and brainstorm what is a holistic solution that we can give to the government, right? I spent 6 years doing that. And while I'm doing that, and something clicked to me to say, so one of the biggest challenges that the government who are working, the civil servants at that time, they haven't really been sort of dealing with lawyers and etc. They are not used to deal with that. So I kind of act as a communicator between people who have the skill sets and people who want the skill set, right? And so that was kind of something I accumulated. It's very hard to describe what skill set it is until one day I was volunteering at this one of the non-profit organization, right? So this non-profit organization needs to go for its auditing. So they need to put together a financial statements, right? So they don't have the money to hire an accountant to do it. So they find a volunteer to do it. And after a few meetup, they said, okay, this volunteer is terrible. They couldn't get my stuff done, and I'm behind time and etc. So I went in, and she asked me, can you help us out doing the accounting job? So I said, okay, sorry, I'm not, I'm accounting trained, but I haven't done much about preparing financial statements for a charity. So I said, okay, let me come and see what I can do. So I went in and talked to her, And apparently what the gap is that actually she had understood that, if somebody is an accountant, they can come in and do everything from scratch. But I said, have you kept your receipts? She said, oh, receipts are just in the box. So I said, okay, but somebody come and look at your receipt, they will know like how you spend it, and whether this amount is spent on your company card or your personal or reimbursement, or what category is it, entertainment, or is it buying products or fixed assets or whatever. She said, I have no idea. The accountant should know and sort it out. So I tried the AI, so I kind of know why it doesn't work is because despite, accountant can come and help you, you as the organization leader or you have the business owner, you should know what this money has been spent about what. So I find kind of the issue is really not a skill set gap, but it's really about communication and understand what each other can do or what each other can't do, right? So immediately I find, wow, okay, my skill set is so unique and can apply in this charity sector. So I volunteer at a second charity. It's the same issue. So they want to draft a contract, so they find a lawyer who want to volunteer for them. So they said, okay, you are a lawyer, you can draft a contract for me. So the lawyer said, no, you have to tell me what you want me to write. And they said, no, you're a lawyer, you should be able to know what to write. So I came in again and tried to just be the sort of interpreter to help them to understand each other and what are the skill gap required. So I do think, irregardless where you start from university or you start from commercial world, all the experience or the skill sets you accumulate definitely will help.
I think at the end of the day, you can start a social enterprise from university, or you can start it 10 years after you've had a corporate experience. You'll learn skills either way, and yes, definitely the skills you learn in corporate life are very, very transferable. And if you start your own business, God, your learning curve is like tenfold. I think at the end of the day, what it takes is really finding out what your passions are. So sometimes it's very hard to start a social enterprise straight from university because you don't really know what you care about. So for me, it was kind of a journey of different experiences through ISEC, through working in corporate life, and then through getting involved in adventures and with different friends that I started to realize where my passions really lied and what direction I wanted to go. And now all those things that I was experiencing in corporate world are absolutely transferable, and all of the things I learned in ISEC are absolutely, valuable. The other thing I would add is I don't think that, the corporate world's so bad these days. I think companies really understand what it is that Gen Y and even younger generations are actually looking for, that pretty much everyone nowadays is looking for meaning in work, and companies really are changing. So if I wasn't doing what I love right now, I'd probably be working for a company like Unilever that I have a huge amount of respect for, because they're trying to completely change their business and make doing good a part of their business.
I think that's a very important part, in terms of like when you want to start and finding yourself. And probably, I think for the three of you all, it is safe to assume and believe that this particular passion for social enterprise couldn't be transferred, to you on just one single day, right? So perhaps could you, maybe we start, Carol, could you share with us like how this motivation and this passion came about? Because for a lot of us right now, it's very easy to not care about social enterprise. We live in a very comfortable Singapore. The things that we see are efficient, the things that we see are really well developed. So perhaps could you share with us, where that motivation and where that inspiration and passion all started out? Maybe, go as far as maybe like 10 years old, 15 years old.
The environment that I work in, I'm just right smack in amongst all the beneficiaries. So having worked in that kind of environment, it's very easily motivated to know why you are there. Every time when the going gets rough, and you lose business deals, or you simply cannot get the manpower you want, and all kinds of challenges that comes into a social enterprise. What I'll do is just walk out to the workshop and just be with my people for a while, and then just talk to them, and then just walk a few rounds. Then I get charged up again. This is why I'm here, and I go back to my desk and start all over again. And that passion of wanting to make a difference in the life of these people is one of the motivating factor. And in fact, it's the major motivating factor that unites a lot of like-minded people who joins our company. Where the going gets tough, and we just say, never mind, it's for them. It's not for us, it's for them. So we just shoulder on.
This is very interesting. That's very, very good to hear as well, that it really comes organically. Perhaps Peter, what about you?
Right. I think similar to Laura, I think it's a story about getting the dots get connected, right? So I'm not sure how many of you heard the talk by Apple's previous CEO talk about getting the dots connected, and that's how he started Apple. So it's same for me, and you go back to the previous question is about whether you should start now or start later. I think it doesn't really matter as long as the dots get connected for you. You find the purpose and you find something that you're so passionate about. You should start, right? It's the same story for me as well. I think it's not day one I wake up that I want to set up this social enterprise. It's about a different stage that something has happened that has planted a seed, and one day the seeds all the dots got connected. I think I just name a couple of dots. I think the first dot is when I was in Isaac. So I was in a conference like this, and end of the conference somebody shared the facts that, do you know how many people in the world that similar age as us, but who have never get a chance to go to university, go to live at a home that have hot water, have food and etc. I can't remember the facts. It was amazing that how many millions of people who don't have the privilege as I do. So they asked the question that, since you are so privileged, so what can you do to help those people who don't have the luck or the opportunity? So that was one of the seeds always planted in me. The second seed, I think, was one of the incidents. I was volunteering in Singapore. I was dragged by my friends to a hospice. So it is a hospital setting whereby my job as a volunteer was to make a person who is dying feel better, right? So this old lady, she was having dialysis, right? So I see all the tubes plugged in her, so the blood goes in, the blood goes out. That was my first experience going to a hospital and see that. I never ever had any experience like this. So I was so shocked, and as a volunteer, I go there. So she was shouting like she was really in pain and etc. Right? And my job was make her feel better. So I was trying to despite all my professional knowledge, I have no idea how to make her feel better. So I was thinking, should I actually tell her that after this dialysis she will be better? But that's a lie, right? She will be gone in a couple of months, right? Or should I just tell her to bear with this pain and etc. Right? So as educated as I am, I have no idea how to do that, and I left this volunteer opportunity after an hour, and I felt like that I have made no contribution at all, right? If anything, the person has actually contributed to my life to educate me, like, I have a healthy body and I need to think about what else can I do. So I went home to say, okay, if I spend 1 hour volunteering in the hospice versus I spend 1 hour helping a non-profit to find a skilled volunteer, I can make much more sort of value out of my 1 hour using my skill sets. And so that was another seed so in me to say, okay, maybe I should do something with my skill sets rather than me just wasting time and not adding any value. So these were the two sort of incidents, and one day I was, the last seed, I was lying on my bed and thinking about what else can I do if I don't want to climb the corporate ladder, and all these past opportunity made sense to me to say I have skill sets, I'm privileged, and I want to make a difference. And I have many friends like Laura, etc., to run an amazing social enterprise which I can be of service to them. So at that moment, everything got connected and say, oh, okay, maybe I can create a social enterprise to help other social enterprise. And that was my kind of light bulb moment, if you will.
That's a very, very fairy tale moment, actually. Not many people have the opportunity to feel deeply and then proceed on to do it. So perhaps, Laura, what about you? What is your, the moment that clicked, or the moments that clicked?
Yeah, I think I've shared a little bit already, but a few other things is I grew up on a farm in Australia, so I spent all of my time in the outdoors and nature, and that for me was probably the first dot. And then second, joining ISEC and becoming aware of all of these different issues. But I think it really came to the forefront when I was living in Vietnam and I was working in a corporate environment. My job was I was a marketing manager for a coffee chain, and I was basically in charge of selling more coffee and so forth throughout Vietnam, and then also expanding it throughout the region. And I was working like crazy, and I was essentially burning myself out. And at the end of the day, friends were asking me for what? Like, what's the purpose of this? And I really have to thank those close friends around me who held me accountable to living a better life and to finding out what I was passionate about. So one of those friends actually convinced me to join her for a bicycle ride across the US and Canada. So I went on a 2-month bicycle ride, and for me it was just it was actually just me time where I could reflect and think about what I was really passionate about, and also to make a decision whether I wanted to come and join Gone Adventuring in Singapore. So that was a very defining moment for me. And now that I'm here in Singapore, I'd say that one of the most important things has been having a support network and a space that can continue to allow me to be passionate about what I'm doing. So I'm fortunate to work out of the Hub Singapore, which is just across the road. It's full of social entrepreneurs, of very vibrant, innovative, passionate people, and that helps me stay true to what I'm doing. And then I also have to be thankful for mentors and supporters that we have. So people like Peter who mentor us and help us on our journey.
I think the passion is really, really strong. Sometimes it comes with cost, and people view social enterprises differently. Your own family members view it differently. So the next question I'd like to ask, start with Carol, in terms of how people have viewed what you are or who you are, has it changed? What are the positives and the negatives of how they view you, given that you've transited pretty much seamlessly into the industry from a very corporate industry into the non-corporate industry? So what are the ups and downs of that social image that you have with relatives, because we become a very Asian context, right? Everything's about 面子, everything's like, oh, how do you look, who is this, how is she doing? Yeah, every time Chinese New Year somebody wants to ask that question, right? So what are the ups and downs of this for you in terms of your yourself?
I think throughout that journey, every time when I share with people where I'm working, and the many who know that I came from the commercial sector, like the Yu Yap Sings and the big companies, they have a very positive rub-on and a lot of encouragement from my friends and ex-classmates, and say, hey, you're doing a good thing now, it's good for you. So very, very positive feedback, and I always feel very encouraged, and I feel very proud to share what I do, because through that passion you can see that they also get dragged into the charity work or the good work that you're doing, and they want to be part of it too. So I think it's not that although Singapore is sometimes considered quite a materialistic country, there are still a lot of kind-hearted and very soft people around who knows that that's something we need to do. It's just that we don't want to face up to it sometimes. And when you are really doing it, you really feel good about it.
So that's one for you. What about you, Peter?
Okay, I'm thinking, and I think I think for me it goes both ways, right? My family is still in China, so every time I go back, Chinese New Year, right? So my parents stop talking about what I'm doing to my relatives because they think they couldn't understand, and they feel like, oh, this is such a sort of is he don't know what he's doing and etc. So that's kind of a bit of that, and a bit of where my ex-colleague and or some of my friends actually understand it similar as the previously shared. They said, "Oh, you are actually doing, making a difference to the society and etc." That's such a noble cause. I mean, to me, none of this matters, and I think in the future we are going